Hi BookTube, it's Amy here again, and I'm here to do a tag. A couple of days ago, Matthew from the Mayberry Book Club was kind enough to tag me in his brand new tag called the Recluse Book tag. And I have the questions pulled up beside me on the laptop here. Now, when it comes to being a bit of a recluse, I would say that definitely describes me. I spend far more time indoors reading alone than I do out in public spaces, so to speak. So this is the perfect tag for me. So the first question says, what do you look for in the ultimate bookstore in under an hour? Now, I can only imagine what the ultimate bookstore would look like. I've been in several locations that do resemble what I imagine the ultimate bookstore would be. And when I find a new used bookstore I've never been in before and it looks promising, I usually go for 3 sections. Initially, I look around when I walk in and I look for anything that looks old. So anything that looks like it could be 1920s or earlier, and I make a beeline for that section. Quite often, bookstores put older books all in one spot. So there is often a vintage book section. And so I will go there first. And lately, I would look for J.M. Barrie and I would look for Louisa May Alcott, and I would look for any other interesting older book that catches my fancy. Now, if there wasn't a specific section for those books, then I would head to the general fiction area, which in general, if I did go to that vintage book section, I would make the general fiction my second stop when I go into the bookstore. And I am someone who scans shelves very quickly. I read the spines and I go along very fast. I know there are some people who like to linger a long time in bookstores, but I am an impulse buyer and I don't like to waste a lot of time poring over shelves and picking up every book and looking closely. As I said, I buy on impulse, so I go based on, oh, that's a pretty book, let me pick it up and see what that is, or I know that author on the spine, let me pick that up and see what that book is. And so I can scan really quickly for anything of interest. And once I've made it through that fiction section, with whatever I find, then I will head towards biography and towards journals and letters. So nonfiction, but specifically for the section with the biographies, if there is one. For the section with collections of letters, with autobiographies, with memoirs, and that is where I will dig around next. And you'd be surprised how much I can pick through in an hour. So to me, an hour sounds like plenty of time in the ultimate bookstore because I am very efficient and I would come out with some excellent finds. Now, of course, the way I go about things, there's a good chance that I often miss books that could be good, but for me, the benefits of moving quickly outweigh the benefits of lingering, because I am not someone who likes to linger over my purchases, which may sound a little odd coming from someone who loves books and loves to linger over books in my own apartment. But for me, the act of shopping for books is a little bit of a different experience, and it's rare that I will spend more than a half hour, 40 minutes in a single bookshop browsing. And it would have to be a truly, truly massive bookstore for me to actually need the whole hour described here. So question 2 asks, who is your favorite reclusive character or novel with a reclusive / antisocial / loner character? A novel with an isolated or claustrophobic setting. So when I think of a reclusive character, there are a couple that I could mention. One that immediately came to mind today is the main character in Michael Crummey's novel, Sweetland. I was watching another booktube who was talking about Michael Crummey's more recent novel, The Innocents, and that's what brought to mind Sweetland for me today. And the main character in Sweetland really is the ultimate recluse. He is an older gentleman living in Newfoundland, and the government has made the decision to offer everyone compensation if they will leave this isolated coastal community and resettle elsewhere. And he refuses to leave, and so he ends up, through a series of events that I won't reveal, he ends up alone in this isolated place. So he's definitely a recluse. Question 3, with a week off with no obligations, what books would you like to read? So I do have a week off with no obligations coming up in April, and I'm not sure where I'm going to be taking on that trip yet. Probably just a single book from my apartment here for reading on the train, because I can pick up more reading material or find more reading material when I get to my location. And it may end up being either that Simone de Beauvoir biography by Deidre Baird that I haven't started reading yet, or perhaps the volume of Marcel Proust's letters that I have sitting over there. But when it comes to travel, I think I'm somewhat unusual as well in this regard, because there is that old, joke about the reader packing as many books as they can into their suitcase, and I don't like to do that. I like to be as lightweight and as mobile as possible when I travel, because whatever I put in that suitcase, I have to move about with me. I have to haul it up train steps, I have to lift that suitcase, I have to pull it around. And there's always in the back of my mind the thought of, well, what if I get stuck somewhere with this suitcase and I have to walk a long distance? Or what if my suitcase gets lost and all my books go with it? Several things like that come to mind. And I just like to have as little baggage, literal baggage on me as possible when I travel. And so for that reason, the last few trips I've taken the last few years, I've only taken maybe 1 or 2 books with me, and I pick up books on my travels as I go. Plus, the fewer books you take with you, the more books that you can purchase and bring back, which is also a bonus. Number 4 asks, what books would you actually be reading? So when I take vacations, I often take a mammoth with me. We are in March, so March are the mammoths, but I often take a mammoth or a chunkster with me, something deep, something nonfiction often, and I say, I'm gonna finally read this. Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, for instance, I've dragged that with me on several vacations and still have not read it. But what it comes down to is, just like in my day-to-day life, I end up reading whatever I feel like reading in the moment, because as I've said before, I am an impulse reader. I am a rabbit hole reader. I just follow the chain of books down that rabbit hole, for better or for worse, for indifferent. So yeah, I don't know what I'll actually be reading. Probably not whatever I could tell you that I would be reading now. It'll be a mixed bag, whatever rabbit hole I'm pursuing a month from now.